All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Torah Studies. This is our weekly look at the Torah portion. Torah portion this week is Yitro, or Yitro, depending on how you pronounce it. Okay, so let's begin with a little bit of an overview of the Torah portion, and then we're going to jump into our specific conversation. Topic is good without God, not for long. Okay, so that's the topic, that's the theme. Hey, Scott, good to see you. And let us jump in. Okay, so first thing you need to know is that the highlight of this week's Torah portion is probably the highlight of history. Can we say that? Is that accurate? Highlight of history would be Revelation at Sinai. Revelation at Mount Sinai, when God gave the Jewish people the Torah over 3,330 years ago. And it probably bears mentioning that this is an as the commentaries point out, this is an unprecedented event in human history, nor has it been repeated since. Never has it been recorded. Never has it even been claimed that there is, hey, good to see you, welcome, that there was a mass revelation, divine revelation to human beings. I feel like I just need to jump to kind of emphasize this point for a second. Most religions, how do most religions begin? Or what's the origin story of most religions? Somebody says, God spoke to me, and this is what he said, and I'm going to tell you what he said to me. Or a few people say, God spoke to us, like a few people, and this is what he said. But how rare is it? It's not only rare, it's literally unprecedented for there to be a story of mass revelation to millions of human beings. Right? Can you think of another recording in history about millions of people having divine revelation? Doesn't exist. Now, just to clarify where I'm getting the millions of people number from. So how many males were there at this time between the ages of 20 and 60? What's the count? About 600,000. How do I know this? The Torah says 600,000 Jewish men between the age of 20 and 60. If you figure that there's an equivalent number of Jewish women between 20 and 60, that makes the number 1.2 million. I got my calculator open. We're doing the math, right? So 600,000 plus 600,000 is 1.2 million. And then you think about how many young men and women or boys and girls under the age of 20. It's got to be a big number. Maybe another 600,000. Who knows? And then you have the men and women above age 60. Again, another large amount. So all told, I mean, we don't know exactly, but you can figure. Hey, Yaakov, we can figure that there were a few million people at Sinai. And in addition to this, I should mention the famous, good to see you, welcome back, the famous notion that at Sinai, all Jewish souls were present, even the ones that hadn't yet been born, which is the reason for the name for the Jewish dating app called
Saw You at Sinai.
Saw You at Sinai. That's real. That's legit, by the way. There's a Jewish dating app called Saw You at Sinai. It's not one of those swipe right, swipe left things. It's more of like, we want to get to know fellow members of the tribe. And the idea is, we met once upon a time. We met at Sinai. Saw you at Sinai. Let's meet again. That's kind of the theme.
That's the 3,000 plus age range, right?
Very good. Right, when you're choosing your age. 3,000 years old. Right. So yeah, the soul would have some longevity. The point is that this mass revelation is something that is just phenomenal. And in classes, previous occasions, we talked about the significance of there being a claim of mass divine revelation and how, that bolsters the claim of Torah's authenticity, but that's not for tonight. What I want to point out tonight is the following, is that in the lead-in to the experience at Sinai, God refers to the Jewish people in a very interesting turn of phrase. And we're gonna jump into that right away here at the top of the class. Yaakov, could I ask you, you can open up the bottle, it's fine. We'll let you open up the water bottle. But what I do want to ask is for you to read text 1a, in the booklets, and give me a second. All right, perfect. Ready when you are.
No reading glasses. Let me see if I can read without glasses. This will be a good.
Need help? No? Readers. Three.
All right.
Okay, there you go.
And now, if you will listen to my voice and keep my covenant, you will be a treasure to me from among all the nations, for the entire earth is mine. And you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation.
All right. Thank you for reading that. So this is in the lead-in. Sharing is caring. Thank you very much. Thank you for reading Yaakov. So this is the lead-in to the revelation at Sinai and the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Ten Commandments. And God basically says, now it's contingent. If you will listen to my voice and keep my covenant, you will be a treasure to me. And the Hebrew is segula. Ve'yitem li segula. You will be a treasure. Segula is treasure. One of the translations lists of treasure from all the nations on the earth. And then it says, you'll be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The question really is, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a treasure? A nation that is God's treasure. What does that mean? And what does it also mean? And also, what does it mean that we are a kingdom of priests and a holy nation? Many commentaries and many explanations. A lot of ink has been expended to explain these verses. We're going to jump right into the Sforno's interpretation. Yaakov, still with you. Every time you open up a bottle of water, there I am. One more text. Please read text 1b.
Please. Reading glasses, courtesy of Merle Solomon.
Yes.
And you will be for me a kingdom of priests. By this you will be chosen from among all the nations, for you will be a kingdom of priests, to teach and guide the entire human race, to invoke God's name, and to serve him shoulder to shoulder.
All right, let's reflect on this reading for a quick second. What is it saying? What is the definition of being a kingdom of priests? What does that mean, according to the Sforno? What does it mean to be a kingdom of priests? Jump in. Who's got it?
To teach and guide the entire human race.
Oh, there you go. So what it means is to teach and guide the entire human race. Now, that is not necessarily intuitive. Most people would say that what was God doing at Sinai, and what was God announcing before Sinai, that here I am giving you a unique code, a way of life. And if you observe this code of life, then you'll be special, or then you'll be mine, or whatever it is. But here the Sforno says, no. What it means is, what a kingdom of priests, and by the way, I just have to point out that phraseology even is a little bit bizarre. Kingdom of priests? What does that mean? There's a king and there's a priest. Mamlechet Kohanim. So Melech is a king and Kohen is a Kohen. So like Mamlechet Kohanim, a kingdom of priests, one might say that that's kind of what leads the Sforno to his interpretation. Because what does a king do? A king is not for himself. A king is about leading others and elevating his nation. And what does a priest do? A priest serves others and elevates others spiritually. And so by referring to the children of Israel as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, you have really all of the above. A holy nation means be holy, be righteous, do your thing. But a kingdom of priests implies that you're going to be focused on the welfare and the betterment of others. And that's what the Sforno says, right? What does it mean to be a kingdom of priests? To teach and guide the entire human race. And what is it? So it's funny because I remember reading an article, I don't know, online somewhere, maybe Slate magazine. Is that a thing? Maybe it's a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the argument was a Jewish author. This is probably 10 years ago, maybe even more. Maybe 10 years ago. And her argument was that basically Jews are no longer needed. Well, hold on. She wasn't God forbid, calling for the end of Jews. But she was basically saying that Jews as a distinctive race or a distinctive culture or a distinctive religion really don't have much of a utility anymore. It's time to end this whole Jews are different and just assimilate, just become American or become worldly, and that's it. And her argument was because Jews have contributed so much, right? There's foods that are uniquely Jewish and there's culture that's uniquely Jewish and not uniquely, that it's pervaded Jewish foods and culture and humor. Remember, she focused in the article on humor. There's so much Jewish humor, the style of humor, and Hollywood, whatever. It's so Jewish. Jews have contributed. At this point, everyone's kind of semi-quasi-Jewish. And so you don't need Jews as a distinct race, distinct people, distinct religion, because the influence is there, and that's it. Okay, fine. That aside, the Sforno has another take on what it means to be an influencer. It's not about transmitting your humor and your gefilte fish, not gefilte fish, and your kosher dill pickles. That's not like bagels. Oh, it's not about bagels and lox and pickles. What else has gone like universal?
Definitely not gefilte fish.
Not gefilte fish. I misspoke with gefilte fish. That is decidedly not mainstream. Whatever. Okay, so we all know. Hummus, right? Okay, fine, good. So the Sforno, if you look back, I'm just going to reference this one more time, text 1b. Look back at what he writes. He says, it means to teach and guide the entire human race, not to Seinfeld, and not to Warner Brothers. Were Warner Brothers Jewish? But rather to invoke God's name and to serve him shoulder to shoulder. Wow, look at that kumbaya. Look at that. Shoulder to shoulder, what a beautiful vision of the world. Basically, to influence the world, to connect with God, to serve God, invoke God's name, and serve him shoulder to shoulder. Again, very poetic, very beautiful. And this is the Sforno's understanding of what this means. And by the way, you can look at the Sforno, look at his bio for a moment. When did he live? He lived in 1475. He was born, in 1475, passed away in 1550.
Right through the Spanish Inquisition.
Right through the Inquisition, and he was born in Italy. And what else? Yeah, he was Italian. So there was a lot of upheaval in his world. Can you imagine a Jewish scholar then at that time talking about influencing Jews, influencing the world, to invoke God's name and to serve God shoulder to shoulder? That's a pretty bold take. That's a pretty bold vision of not only the future or the possibility of what could be in a world in which people are getting along, but also as to the kind of the Jewish mission. All right. Now, the question really is, what does that mean? What does it mean that, okay, so hold on. Before I ask my question, I realized, let me take a half a step back. So let's just contextualize this before I ask the question. So Revelation at Sinai, 10 Commandments, all of that is in this week's Torah portion. But before that happens, before God gives us the Torah, or the 10 Commandments, which is the core of the Torah, before that, God says, I'm going to make you into a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And we've explained that what that means is, God is telling us, I'm about to give you the Torah, but you should know this, your mission, hey Mike, good to see you. Your mission is one that pertains to every human being on earth. You're not just here for yourself, and like I said before, your own gefilte fish. That's not why you're here. You're here to benefit all of humankind. But now the question is, what does that mean? Because that would seem to imply, at face value, at surface glance, that the Jewish mission is to somehow teach Judaism to everybody. That's not. That's what it's. It almost seems like that's what he's saying. Jewish values, but does that mean that everyone should be, wearing tzitzis and fasting on Yom Kippur? What does this actually mean? What does it mean? Shaking a lulav and an esrog? What does this Sforno actually mean? Again, if you look at the words, it's important. Listen, we're studying Torah, so let's actually get into the text. He says, as he explains what it means to be a kingdom of, what God is charging the Jewish people to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. He says to teach and guide the entire human race, to invoke God's name, to serve him shoulder to shoulder. What does that mean? What does it mean to invoke God's name and to serve him? How? Jewishly? Now, the problem with that suggestion is that we've never found, and Judaism very much, shares that it's not a Jewish mission. It's not a Jewish drive to teach Judaism per se to every human being on earth. That's never been a Jewish mission. Meaning, if the Sforno is saying that, what it means is that everybody should be taught to be Jewish, that can't be, because that's never been a Jewish motivation. That's never been a mission, as it were. It's not a proselytizing religion. On the contrary, right? It's like someone wants to be Jewish and say, do you really like gefilte fish that much? I mean, are you really into it that much? All right. Listen, The doors are open. The doors are always open, but it's not necessarily pressure. So we have to say this, that the Sfardim didn't mean that it's the mission of the Jewish nation to teach Judaism specifically to all of mankind, but rather to teach God's core values to all mankind. And what do we call them?
7 Noahide laws.
That's it. The 7 Noahide laws. Don't you have a Noach in your name?
Mm-hmm. Yaakov Noach.
Yaakov Noach. There you go.
Ben Shlomo
They
HaShofet.
named the laws after you. Who would have thought? All right, so here we go. So what are the 7 Noahide laws? Sheva mitzvah b'nei Noach. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So the very first, the chapter 5 or verse 5, and now if. So this is it concerning? Should we be concerned? Because if we don't keep the commandments, being Jewish is not enough to get the blessings and to serve as the, because then we're dropped either singularly or as a people, and somebody else is going to fill the niche.
Good question. So the question is, Yaakov's question is, one second, it seems like the first text implies, text 1a, the verse seems to imply that all of this covenant and all of this, special blessing is all contingent on us keeping our end of the deal and following the path that God has set for us. The truth is, you find this throughout the Torah, especially in the book of Deuteronomy, where Moshe tells the people, like, if you follow it, it's going to be good. If not, the land is going to spit you out. You're going to lose all the blessings. So this is not a unique verse. Yeah, it kind of does say that we got to keep our end of the deal, or else things are not always going to be good. But that doesn't mean that we would be there necessarily replaced. That's already a stretch. It doesn't say, therefore, I'm going to find someone else. That's not stated. That might be an extrapolation, but that's not a Jewish extrapolation. The point of this is to say that there is a unique mission that God is setting forth for the Jewish people to not only within their own structure, within their own religious beliefs, to practice their religion, but also to be an influence to others. And the question that I asked a moment ago is, well, what is that influence if it's not a Jewish influence specifically? And the answer is, it is a universal influence, which is also found throughout the teachings of Torah. So what is that? So let's take a look. What we're going to do now is we will read, we're going to read text number 2, where Maimonides, this is a great day to talk about Maimonides. Yeah. There is a cycle of study that the Rabbi introduced in the 1980s, whereby there's 3 options. You can either study 1 chapter of Maimonides' Mishnah Torah or a day, or 3 chapters a day, or the Sefer HaMitzvot, the book that he covers, the 613 mitzvahs, more in like list form. But either way, you kind of finish the cycle either once a year or once every 3 years. But either way, the cycle just finished yesterday and started again. So it's a great time to talk about Maimonides. And for those that are interested, just Google Maimonides annual study cycle. Click on it. I'm sure you'll find Chabad.org with tons of resources, videos and audio and text and everything to study. It's a really great thing to do on a daily basis. By the way, let me just continue my commercial for Torah study for a second here. And Maimonides specifically, Maimonides is the only halacha codifier who covers all 613 mitzvot. The Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, which was written a few hundred years ago, 400 years ago, only covers the laws that we can do today post-temple destruction. Doesn't talk about in the Code of Jewish Law, that literal book called the Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, doesn't talk about sacrifices or ritual purity and impurity for temple times. But Maimonides covers the whole thing. In fact, he got some heat for this, but he wrote in his introduction to his Mishnah Torah, that's the book, 14 volumes, Yad HaChazaka, 14 volumes of Jewish law. He wrote that basically, if you study the Torah, and then you study, did he even say study the Mishnah? I don't remember. But then you study his book, you pretty much have everything. You can study Mishnah and Talmud, the Gemara, but you have a lot of back and forth. But if you study his writings, you're good to go. And again, that was like a bold statement, but nonetheless, Maimonides is incredible, as we know, and it's a worthwhile thing to study. So it's appropriate that today we're going to study a piece of Maimonides. This is from his the last series of laws in the entire book. So we're kind of, reading somewhat of the culmination of the ideas. So here we go.
Who wrote the Shulchan Aruch?
Rabbi Yosef Karo. Yeah. Now, that's not a city. That was his last name. It's not Cairo, Egypt. It's Cairo. Now, let's read. Merle, please read text number 2. Maimonides in his Hilchot Melachim, Laws of Kings, chapter 9. I think there's only like 11 chapters of Laws of Kings, and then that's when the book ends. So this is very close to the end of the entire book. This is what he writes.
God gave Adam and his descendants 6 commandments: the prohibitions against idolatry, blasphemy, murder, inappropriate sexual relations, and theft, as well as the imperative to establish a judicial system. God gave Noah one more commandment: the prohibition against eating a limb of an animal while it is still alive.
Okay.
I didn't know that was illegal. Stop doing that.
Yeah, no more munching on a live animal. Okay, now here we go.
Like
so how would you describe these? So what we have here are, at least in halachic and Jewish legal terminology, what we have here are the 7 commandments that are for all mankind. And yes, you've probably heard of the company called 7 for All Mankind. It's like a clothing company, or it was a clothing company. I don't know if they still exist. 7 for All Mankind. And this is 7 commandments for all mankind. What are they? No idolatry, no blasphemy, no murder, no inappropriate sexual relations, no theft. You have to establish a judicial system, and do not eat a limb of a live animal. So we have animal cruelty, we have law and order, we have belief in a higher power. All of these wonderful values, human values, and these are for all mankind. And so,
but different parts of mankind could have definitions about idolatry and
sure.
Blasphemy.
Sure. Good. You're asking a good question. So who's right? So who decides in the terms? Good. So the short of it is that, again, as the Sforno writes, that as he interprets that opening verse that we read, what does it mean to be a kingdom of priests? It doesn't just mean that you're holy. It means that you care about the welfare of others and are striving to share to others. And what is the universal message of Torah? It's not about, trying to think of like not a fringe, but like, it's not about like not mixing wool and linen necessarily. That's not necessarily a prohibition for everyone, but what is murder and theft, et cetera, right? It's about the laws of humanity, laws of civilization that apply to everyone equally. And that's what it means to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, where you are sharing this and helping inspire others to create a world that God Almighty is content with, that is following God's, I guess we would call it like universal vision. Within the universal vision, there are different pathways, right? And that's fine. And Judaism is a pathway. But what we're talking about here are the universal values, and that is somehow incumbent also upon the Jewish people to be sharing. To the point, take a look at this next text, because this is where it's going to get also very interesting. Text 3, Maimonides, same book, same set of laws, but a few halachot, a few laws earlier, 8:10, that was 9:1. This is 8:10. Take a look at this, and this is going to be a very interesting text that's pretty much going to launch us into the rest of the class. Tova, please take it away.
Moses instructed us in God's name to compel all the people of the world to accept the commandments that were given to the descendants of Noah.
Which word stands out? To me.
Compel.
Exactly. Compel. Now, I mean, you and I might have different definitions of the word compel, but what does compel typically mean? Force and coerce.
Coerce.
And now we must ask the question. Now we can ignore it. We could say, oh, no. What it means is to, here, Ramon, what it means is to inspire. Change, compel, to inspire. Moses instructed us in God's name to inspire all the people of the world. But you know what? That's not what he writes. He doesn't write inspire. Now, if we were being like PC, or we want to be like friendly and whatever, we say, no. It's not compel, it's inspire. But how do you get around that word compel? Unless you want to pretend it doesn't exist, but that's not being honest. Compel exists. So what does that mean? What does that actually mean? That a Jew should go over to someone and say, hey, you must follow the 7 Noahide laws, or else, I mean, like, what's the compelling over here? What does that actually mean? I mean, we're certainly not talking about using force. That's crazy, right? What does that mean, Dr. Maxey?
Does it mean that we live our lives in such a way that people feel compelled or want or are so inspired to be compelled to, in general, take on the same precepts we do?
I love what you're saying. Yeah, we're going to. That is a fantastic angle interpretation on it. We're going to go in along similar lines with a bit of a twist. So I want to present the twist and the concept, and we're going to circle back to this idea. So again, our core question is, if we recognize that within the mission, the pre-Sinai covenantal mission of the Jewish people is to also influence the world with the 7 universal laws for all mankind, great. But then Maimonides says in his book of Halacha, book of law, that it's got to be in a way of compelling others. Oh, what does that mean to compel? And so we have this idea, this suggestion that maybe it's presenting it in a way by living it or demonstrating it where people can't help but be inspired and follow, which I love. We're gonna tweak that a drop, and here's how we're gonna do it. I want to speak about the philosophy of ethics and morality. And it's a very important conversation to have because there's a lot of debate amongst the classic philosophers. And I mean, this is mainly amongst, it's usually framed as a big machloket, as it were, a big dispute between 2 18th century philosophers, Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant, who have a difference of opinion as to the foundation and philosophy of morality. So I think before we get into this, I want to cite the classic trolley dilemma or trolley problem. Many of you might be familiar with this, but I think it's important to kind of like bring it up again. So here's the classic dilemma. I don't remember the exact numbers, so I'm going to kind of create my own numbers. You'll see what I mean by numbers in a second, but here it goes. Imagine, if you will, that there is a runaway train, a train that loses its ability to stop, and it's headed down the track, speeding. And down the line on that track, there are, again, I don't remember the original numbers of the original trolley problem, but let's say there are 5 workers oblivious to this train. And in this example, they will not hear or see or be able to get out of the way in time to prevent themselves from getting killed by this runaway train. Okay. However, before the train gets to the workers, there is the possibility to switch the train onto another track. And if you do that,
you all die.
No. 1 second. If you do that, it'll also be runaway, no brakes. It'll speed down that other track. At that other track, along that track, there's 1 worker working there. Okay. Now, there's different forms of this problem. It's called the trolley problem. I said the 11th trolley problem. Okay, so one form of the question is, let's say you are the, conductor? Conductor. You're the conductor. And you have the ability to, I don't know if this is even a thing. Is that a thing? You have the ability to switch. Mm-hmm. You can switch which track you're going down. Mm-hmm. So now you're the conductor. Mm-hmm. And no, I really mean this. Now you're the conductor. What do? You can't stop. Stopping is not an option. Either you're going to stay on your track and plow through the 5, God forbid, or switch and plow through the 1. What do you do?
5 alive.
What do you do? Look, you pose this question to an audience. Guaranteed, the vast majority of people participating in the question will say, switch. 1 is less of a disaster and a tragedy than 5. Does that make sense? Yes.
Unless the 1 is a little girl petting a kitten.
1 second. Hold on. 1 second. We're not going to get to who's what. Hold on. 1 seems like a better option. Both are horrific, but 1 seems better than 5. Now, what if you were not in the train? What if you were outside the train? What if you were the person at the, I don't know, you're, I guess, at the switch or whatever. I don't know what the names are or whatever. You're at where the convergence of these two tracks, and you can pull a lever to push it. Maybe we would all say that, no, we would probably suggest the same resolution. Switch it to take the 1 over the 5. But what's fun about this, fun, as if it's fun, but what's interesting about this, this thought experiment, and this has been cited in countless times in philosophical works that deal with ethics and morality and life and death, what's interesting is to ask the following question. Let's say there aren't 2 tracks. Let's say there's only 1 track. And let's say there's a train that's speeding, can't stop, and there's 5 workers, and you're on a bridge. You're on a bridge, overlooking this, overlooking the tracks, on top of the tracks. And there's this huge guy next to you. And if you push him off the bridge onto the tracks, he'll stop the train. Or slow it down at least, not to kill the 5. You do it?
But that's murder.
Hold on. Hold on 1 second. Do you do it? Do you do it?
No.
Of course not. Everyone says it's so fascinating, and I'm not doing this right. I would really take your votes and make you raise your hand. I would be like insistent. I'm a nice guy. I'm not actually making anyone do anything. I'm not even making you do like this, right? Can you that's how nice I am. Don't even have to use any muscles in this
It's like
thing.
a little cat in a Chinese restaurant.
1 second. No more cats here. 1 second. What would you say about pushing the guy next to you to stop the train? No one would say yes.
Need his permission.
And what did you say, Tobo? What was the word that you used? That would be
Murder.
murder. So 1 second. It's murder. Why? Why is that murder? Because you pushed him. Well, what if I have an idea? What if one second. What if I didn't have to push him? What if there was a lever I could pull and he would drop down? You don't have to push him.
It's over.
1 second. Everyone said, I know not everyone because I'm just like doing this, right? But everyone is saying, pull the lever, take the 1 over the 5. Why can't I pull the lever to drop this guy down to take the 1 versus the 5? No, that's murder. Okay. The point of this exercise is to point out that when we talk about morality and values and life and death, even the things that we seem very certain about, when you push a little bit, suddenly become a little bit uncertain. And so I want to introduce you, maybe not introduce, but I want to reference the 2 philosophers that I mentioned before. And these are like some of the major fathers of modern ethical systems. Bentham's system and approach is consequentialism. He takes a moral consequential approach, or consequentialist approach. And the approach is, or the philosophy is, that when you're choosing between 2 options, what must guide you is the greatest good for the greatest number. That's it. There's no absolute right or wrong. It's always the greatest good for the greatest number. Make sense? In this case, what would Jeremy Bentham say?
Pull the lever.
Pull the lever. Switch the tracks. 5 lives or 1 life? 1 is clearly better in this case.
Because they're all valuable when you don't know.
There's no good outcome here. But the greatest good for the greatest number would mean switch the track. 1 dies, 5 don't. Good. You save 4 lives.
Plus the kitten.
Fine. That's Bentham. Immanuel Kant takes the approach. That was Bentham. Jeremy Bentham. Bentham. He was an English philosopher and jurist. Immanuel Kant was German. And his take was absolute moral imperatives. He believed that morality is not defined by the greatest good for the greatest number, but rather by absolute principles of right and wrong, of good and evil. And so you have absolute imperatives that drive you and must drive you in guiding behavior and making choices. Okay, let's pause here for a moment. He was such an absolutist. He said if something is a moral value, you got to go all the way. So, for example, truth is a moral imperative. It's not like truth is preferred because by and large it's the greatest good for the greatest number. That's Bentham. He would say that truth is important because it's an absolute moral imperative. And then he was pushed on this. And famously he was asked the question. So what would happen if a murderer comes to your house, knocks on your door, and asks if so-and-so is at your house? And they are. What would you say?
No.
According to Immanuel Kant, you know what he said? You know what he said? You have to say yes.
Yes.
You can't lie. He was so anti-consequences. Like, it's so not about the consequences. Let them fall, let the chips fall where they may. But truth is an absolute moral imperative. I have to be truthful. I need to be honest. I must not utter a lie. Now, before we get to that extreme case, let me ask you the following question. Which approach do you think Torah takes when it comes to values and morality and ethics? Do you think it's consequentialist or absolutist? What would you say?
Consequential.
Really? Oh, I thought you guys were going to say absolutist. Really?
Yeah.
Consequential.
Why not absolutist?
Because Judaism is a practical religion, and we know that different situations are very complicated. And let's say you're in the middle of war, and you're not going to tell someone the truth, and you're not going to be able to save everyone's lives.
I should have asked this question before I gave the example of the murderer coming to the house. But I like what you're saying. I would say the following. In the interest of time, because we have a lot to get to, and so I'm like cutting this conversation a little bit short. I would love to do this like on a more protracted way, but forgive me for rushing through it a drop. I would say the following: that Judaism believes in absolute values. However, it's possible that absolute values can compete, and in that situation, you have to know how to triage absolute moral imperatives.
Yeah,
meaning. Truth is an absolute moral imperative. Midvar sheker tirchak, the Torah says. The Torah says, stay away from falsehood. Midvar sheker tirchak. Stay away from falsehood. So that's an absolute moral imperative. You know what else is an absolute imperative?
Do not murder.
Saving a life. Exactly. So what happens when you can only choose one? I have an imperative to tell the truth. So the guy's asked me, is so-and-so in your house? So I have an imperative to tell the truth. I also have an imperative to save a life. So Judaism and Torah has a system and has a formula. And if you don't know the formula, open up the Talmud or the books of Jewish law, because a lot of the conversation is about this. What happens when two commitments collide? Unless you think this is only a Torah conversation, are you kidding me? It happens all the time. I have a work thing and a family thing. You got to prioritize one or the other. In real life, real values or real important things collide often. And so the question is, what happens when truth and life collide? Well, there's an app for that. I'm kidding. There's a formula for that. And the formula is life trumps everything. That's the formula. I mean, pretty much, with some rare exceptions, but life is pretty much always the overriding value. So if the person is faith, I can only choose to exercise one of my really core absolute values right now. I can either tell the truth or save a life. Save the life. Save the life, right? Like, what do you do? You're in a hospital. You're a doctor. Multiple people come in. You're going to have to choose somehow to prioritize one of the. Does that mean the other one is not absolute? Hold on one second. First, I might ask the question: can I even be a doctor in an ER? Right? Am I allowed? Is it kosher? Is it halachically, Jewishly kosher to be a doctor in the ER? Why? Because I'll be faced with with two lives possibly coming in at the same time. And the Talmud says that he who saves a life saves an entire world, and he who destroys a life is like to destroy an entire world. So 1 second, how could I possibly be in a situation where I'm going to destroy an entire world? You know what the answer is? You gotta figure it out.
Where's the best insurance?
You gotta do the best you can in the situation, but prioritizing the priorities. Now, again, this is life versus life. How do you figure that out? I'll let the medical ethicists, halachic medical ethicists, deal with that question. But the point is that when it comes to truth versus life, truth will always override that. It doesn't mean that we're being consequentialist. It doesn't mean that we're being benthanium. It doesn't mean that we are suddenly losing the absoluteness of these values and we're instead turning to a posture of saying that, well, it's more pragmatic to operate this way. It's not a measure of consequentialist theory. This is simply an understanding that there might be more than one absolute value presenting itself at the same time, at one time. Make sense? All right. But let's go to an even deeper place. And the deeper place is predicated on the 10 Commandments. What is the first of the 10 Commandments?
I am the Lord your God.
Very good. What's the second commandment?
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Okay. Good. I am God. Don't have any other gods. Those are the first few commandments, right? Good. Here's my question. Why this preamble? I am the Lord your God. It seems like story time. I'm your God. Don't have any other gods. Get to the point. Do not kill. Do not murder. Do not steal. Like get to the do's and don'ts. So what we have and what we're about to read, I'll read this, is an incredible commentary that explains that the reason for what might seem like a bit of a preamble, even though it's of the 10 Commandments, but it might seem a bit of a preamble. It's not a preamble at all. It's establishing the authority or establishing the baseline for the adherence to the rest of the commandments. In other words, the foundation of following the commandments is, I am the Lord your God. If you're missing the I am the Lord your God, then what do you have? What you have is humans that might agree on something, but just like they agreed on something, they could just as easily unagree on that thing, which is not a word. They can just as easily discard it. As opposed to not just absolute values because Immanuel Kant said it's absolute, but because God said it's absolute. And that's truly an imperative. Let's take a look at this in the text. Does it make sense? Okay, let's read it in the text. You'll see for yourself exactly what I am referring to. All right, so this is going to be text 4. Oh, it's a midrash. Midrash Mechilta. I will read this, text 4. By way of analogy, listen to this. By way of analogy, a human king enters a country to assume the throne. His advisors urge, issue decrees to the people. He replies, I will issue decrees after they accept my sovereignty. If they don't accept my sovereignty, they won't accept my decrees. Similarly, God first said to the Jewish people, I am God your God, and have no other God but me. By this he was asking, am I the God that you accepted upon yourselves in Egypt? They replied, next page, they replied, yes. God responded, now that you've accepted my sovereignty, accept my decrees. You see that? You know where this also manifests itself, fascinatingly? It manifests itself in the Shema, where the first paragraph talks about, the opening paragraph talks about almost accepting God, acknowledging God, like accepting God as an authority. And then in the second paragraph of the Shema, it's about performing the mitzvot. You can't talk about a mitzvah until you talk about who's giving you the mitzvah. Because otherwise, what are we even talking about here? Like, what's the basis for the mitzvah? So now, you want to say like this. No, the basis for the mitzvah is because the person agrees that it's a good value. But the danger in that is, what happens when a person decides that today, it's not a value? Even if you say there's an absolute moral imperative, by whose standard? Who's establishing it as an absolute? What if somebody wakes up and says, well, I don't believe it's an absolute. I'm happy that the leadership, the government, the king, whoever it is, established, this thing, but I don't agree. That's why you need, first and foremost, a surrender to a higher authority. And then from that place of absolute surrender, the values that king, in this case God, puts forth, they are truly absolute. Okay. So what this means is anything that's based on assumed values or accepted morals or any manner of values of convenience or pragmaticism. We're building a country, so we need to decide on certain values. Okay, well, what if I decide to opt out? I mean, I know that there might be legal consequences, but in general, a person might say, I don't subscribe to that. That's why the key is, first and foremost, recognizing that this is coming from a higher place, higher than myself. Because the one thing we know about ourselves is that we can't trust ourselves. Let me give you an example. Has it ever happened that a person did something wrong and then explained it to themselves and to others that it really wasn't so bad? Or they needed to do it because of X, Y, and Z? Or some of the excuses we tell ourselves, justifications. It's not so bad. Everyone does it. I needed to do it. Or, how many different excuses? We tell ourselves all these narratives, right? Good. But when you accept something unconditionally because it's coming from beyond yourself, then your rationales and justifications don't mean anything. I have no value because I didn't generate it. I'm not ungenerating it either. It's coming from a higher authority. It's I always give the example. I always think about it in these lines. If I'm shopping at Kroger or something and my kids are with me and the kids walk by an aisle with kosher chol v'shol ice cream, which is like a unicorn in Atlanta, whatever. But oh, can we get ice cream? So if I say no, we're not. Or let's say, there are no even ice cream cones here, but let's just say they had a kosher ice cream cone. Okay, we have ice cream. So one response could be, no, we're not doing ice cream. But another response might be, oh, you can't have dairy ice cream because you ate meat. So you're fleishik, right? Your meat status, you're not dairy. Which one do you think they push back on? The first one. The first one of no, we're not buying ice cream. Why? Because we decided not to. You can push back on that. Can we undecide? But when you present, again, in my experience, you present it as it's not kosher. There's a higher authority here. It's just that we can't do that.
Yeah, but then it expires in 6 hours, so then they can hit it again.
Yeah, I know. I'm not giving a great example.
But they may not know that if they're young.
I'm not giving a perfect example. I'm just giving an example, right? So you're right. They could always say, buy it and we'll have it tomorrow. Correct. But are they going to think that? It's more of can we have it right now? And the answer is no.
No, not now.
You're another example. Oh, maybe even maybe a better. I'm at Tip Top. The Israeli place? Mm-hmm. Tip Top by the Israeli Center. Savoy Drive. And sitting with the family and having schnitzel. So definitely in the meat genre. Then the kids are oh, can we have a can of Coke? No, it's sugar. It's not healthy. It's late. Well, whatever the excuses are. How will that go? There might be a bit of a pushback. But what if they say, oh, can we have the dairy chocolate bar now for dessert? Not happening. So again, it's just now, will that work in all situations, in all contexts, and all whatever? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying that there is something about things being not just categorical, but categorical from a higher truth, from a higher value. And to see this power, because it's really powerful, I want to read, I think I want to skip text 5. and jump to text number 6. Because I feel like I've explained text 5 outside, but I want to jump into text 6, which is really beautiful. I'm going to read this quickly. It uses a line, cut flower culture, that I think is really powerful. And it's a bit of a cautionary tale about Western civilization. Okay, let me start. The moral principles of Western civilization are in fact all derived from the tradition rooted in Scripture and have vital meaning only in the context of that tradition. The attempt made in recent decades, and this was written in 1979, the attempt made, or published at least in 79, because he passed away in 77, the attempt made in recent decades by secularist thinkers to disengage these values from their religious context in the assurance that they could live a life of their own as humanistic ethic has resulted in what one writer has called our cut flower culture. What does that mean? Cut flowers retain their original beauty and fragrance, but only so long as they retain the vitality that they have drawn from their now severed roots. After that is exhausted, they wither and die. So it is with freedom, brotherhood, justice, and personal dignity, the values that form the moral foundation of our civilization. Without the life-giving power of the faith out of which they have sprung, they possess neither meaning nor vitality. Morality, ungrounded in God, is indeed a house built upon sand, unable to stand up against the vagaries of impulse, and the brutal pressures of power and self-interest. And, it's very, I think it's beautifully written, and it's really powerful. And, I see Dr. Max, Dr. Max and I have talked about this in the context of, medical ethics. And, when you pull out things from a core divine space, and you try to figure out, okay, so what is the algorithm that will determine who lives and who dies and who gets paid for and who doesn't? You're already on grounds that are really, really dangerous. Now, you're going to think about this in humanistic terms. Well, we started with values in our country, the United States of America is founded on, Torah values. That's read any book on the founding of our country. It's founded on Torah. You can call it Judeo-Christian. It's founded on Torah specifically. And that's great. But, it's been a few hundred years and things kind of evolve and move. And now it's like, well, maybe religion isn't so in as far as like in that dogmatic sense. And so we're moving from, scriptural or biblical or Torah-based values to humanistic values. Like we believe in the value of whatever you believe in. And that's great. And for a while, it's like when you cut the flowers. So you see beautiful roses that are growing and you cut the roses and they're still beautiful. And a day passes and a week passes and 2 weeks pass. And you know what happens as time goes on to those beautiful flowers that are now severed from their roots? You know what's going to happen? You know what happens. They die. They wither and die. And no longer are they beautiful roses. They are no longer beautiful roses. They are dead roses. And the danger in every society, because every society, I can't say every society is rooted in Torah, but every society kind of begins with a drive and begins with some sort of, pulse or some sort of motivation that propels it forward. But in the context of Western civilization, i.e. the United States, it's definitely driven by Torah values. The question is what happens when you try to divorce the modern ethos and values and morals of a society from those sources. You end up with a situation where who's calling the shots? And who's making the decision? And you know how many moral and ethical questions we face today in medicine and technology, right? In industry, in the workforce, and the questions don't end. And here's my question to those questions: who's answering them? Who's making that call? Who gets to choose? Because you know what happens when people get to choose. I know what happens when people get to choose. Sometimes the worst instincts come out. What's in it for me? Greed, personal gain, right? You don't think, okay. We live in a capitalistic society and that's a blessing, and it comes with the flip side of that also. Every coin has two sides. And so the point of this class and we're going to answer the question soon, is to say that the 10 Commandments, by beginning with almost God dictating a narrative, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. And as the Midrash says, it's almost like God saying, are you with me? Because if you're not with me, I'm not going to bother with the rest of the commandments. But if you're with me, then I will tell you the rest of the story. Because when I tell you the rest of the story, it's got to be based on Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God. If it's based on anything else, it's a cut flower, and it's on quicksand, and at some point it's going to sink. As long as we stay true to the core and remember the foundation, we got a shot. If we disconnect from that core, from I am the Lord your God, from that opening salvo, as it were, in a positive way, from that opening shot, the shot heard around the earth. If we move away from that, then what do we have left? And so remember Maimonides, who said that it's the Jewish mission to compel the nations of the world to follow the seven. He said, what does it mean to compel? Compel. It's about influence, not compulsion. Who's compelling? You ready? You know what it means on this level, now that we just had this nice conversation over the last, since that question, 30 minutes? You know what it really means? To present the idea of a God-driven morality that itself compels the moral behavior. Not that we're compelling, but to present God behind the commandments, which then compel the behavior. It's not that you opted in to moral behavior, not killing, not stealing, not eating, not no cruelty to animals, because you decided it was good. What if it's not expedient anymore? It's got to be compelled from God. Again, this is not the Jew compelling the nations of the earth, but the Jew presenting the idea as one that can't be any other way because it's divine and godly oriented. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just like the Jew would say, the reason why I'm not murdering, I'm not violating family, etc., is not because I've decided it's important, but because God told me it's important, and therefore I must, even when it's not so convenient. That's the way it needs to be presented to all of mankind. That this is not good ideas or interesting ideas. These are divine ideas that compel us to act in a certain way. It's compelling. I hope that made sense. I want to end with one point. Here's the final point. You know, it's been a long history for the Jewish people. And for much of Jewish history, there hasn't been a platform or the possibility for Jews to influence on this level. I mean, Maimonides says it's a mitzvah, but the question, when the Rebbe was talking about this decades ago, you know, people were pushing back, other rabbis saying, it's not Maimonides has one line about it, but like, we don't find this discussed in, classic halachic authorities in the Code of Jewish law. It doesn't exist. And the Rebbe's response was, yeah, because it wasn't practical. When you're running for your life, you're not going to say, oh, and don't forget to be moral as you're running away, literally trying to save your life from someone attacking you, pogroming you. What are the odds that you're going to turn around and say, hey, do you know what God wants you to do? That's probably not the most practical option. But in 2026, when we live in a world in which we all have a platform, and we live in a country with freedom and democracy and the ability to share and to teach and to be a good example, then it becomes once again an imperative to not only make sure that we're doing what we need to do and we're living by our values and our morals and our and our beliefs, but to be a good influence unto others and to the whole world of what it means to be dedicated to morals, not because they're convenient, not because they're expedient, not because they serve us in some sort of way or they tickle our sense of right and wrong, but because the Creator has told us that this is what we must do. And so therefore, doesn't matter if it's convenient today or not, this is something I need to do. And someone said before about, I think Dr. Max, about modeling it. And I think that's the only way, right? What does it mean to teach? It means to model it. To model not changing our mind when it's not comfortable, but to being consistent. One way to really do this, one way to make an impact. You want to make an impact? Here's how to make an impact. Yeah? Tell your coworkers you're not answering emails on Shabbat. Try that. Right? Try that. You know what that's going to tell them? It's going to tell them, here's a person
that wants to get fired.
No, here's a person that's so dedicated to their beliefs. And not because I think I want to take a break, because once a week I need that mental health, break. No. It's God's day of rest, and I'm observing it. You know what message that sends? Wow. Here's a colleague, someone that I know who is so dedicated to God's call that they're going to turn off their phone for 24 hours. That's amazing. And you know what you're impressed about? You're not telling them to keep Shabbos, to observe Shabbat. That's not the message. The message is, here's someone who is surrendering their will to a greater will. That's something very special. We can all do that in our own way. I mean, I'm not. Don't take anything specific as necessarily like the call to action. It's wherever you're holding, right? Wherever your circle of influences and your circle of friends and whatever, everyone in their own context, to be a good example of what it means to not just have moral imperatives, but to have moral imperatives that are founded on a higher truth. And that's really what Torah is about, and the Torah that we're meant to share with others. Make sense? All right. And when we do that, the whole world becomes a better place. Yeah.
So in the very first parak that we read, it said that Adam was told, God told Adam about the Noahide laws. But I know it hasn't been, when you're running for your life, it's hard to tell people to be moral and ethical, but are the 7 Noahide laws mentioned anywhere?
Yeah. In Jewish, the question is where the 7 Noahide laws mentioned.
In the Torah?
I mean, if you look at the Torah, all those values are mentioned. Sure.
But as Noahide laws, because I don't think most Jews know about the 7 Noahide laws.
That's the point. We gotta educate.
Yeah. So
we gotta educate ourselves to educate others.
The Christians that they'll read the Torah, they don't abide by it, they don't feel compelled to follow it, but I don't think they would ever see 7.
You're saying I understand your question. Is there a distinct, clear list in the 5 books of Moses? Yeah. Here's the 7.
Yeah, for you guys,
like the 10 Commandments. It doesn't appear like that. It appears in the context of God saying, "I'm going to destroy the world because of the robbery, because of the immorality, because of the murder, because of all that stuff." And so you deduce from there that these are things that went against the principles, and God communicated them to humankind. Yeah. Before He gave the Torah to the Jewish people, He communicated all these laws. And where were they recorded? I don't know. They're in Jewish sources. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how does everyone else know about it? And I guess one answer would be, well, I guess we got to share them. Yeah. Because, how's that going to happen otherwise? But we got the list before.
So many people know and believe in the 10 Commandments, too. That's very
Ten Commandments are known.
10 Commandments are known. But they're not necessarily 10. I mean, I don't know of a denim company that's 10 for all mankind. 7 for all mankind, they're not. Kidding. But, I mean, there's 7 of the 7. 10 are... I don't know. A lot of the 10 are included in the 7.
That's universal.
As a universal
that
thing.
Is universal.
That's a marketing issue.
Whatever.
Why do people know 10 more than the 7? I don't know. Because no one marketed the 7. Your question, I think we're asking now marketing questions. How come that was never marketed?
Correct.
And I think the Rebbe's response to that was, it's been a while since we've had even the opportunity to think about being influential or having that influence on the larger world. But now that we do, we got to think seriously about it.
And it's in the Torah. I mean,
it's in the
God
Torah.
Said, and there's smoke and there's fire, and this is the most dramatic moment of the.
Oh, you're saying the 10 Commandments?
Yes.
I understand the 10 Commandments are.
That's why the world knows about it.
Yeah, there's movies about it. Good. All right. I think we're all in agreement. I'm going to decide that we're all in agreement. That's what I decide. How convenient it would be to decide that we're all agreeing. But the point is, the moral of the story is, you have consequentialist moral reasoning, which is like the greatest good for the greatest number. That's what you watch. But even the absolute moral imperative theory, by whose metric? By whose measure? It's got to be based on a higher authority, or else it will erode. And we've seen it in modern society. We've seen the dangers of saying, no, of course we believe in morality, but, I got to also make $1 billion on this new technology. So, some people are going to get hurt in the process. That's the danger of not having the absolute divine moral authority, because anything that's absolute, because I said so, is not absolute at all. it ceases to be actually absolute. It just becomes a farce. And so we don't want any cut flowers. We want the real deal. Flowers connected, and thus it's all about plugging it. So thank you for joining me tonight. Hope this made sense, and hope we're all inspired to be a good example and to always remember, in God we trust, in God we follow, and to be that light unto others. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Pass your
much.
talk.
Thank you. Hey guys, good to see you. Hey Ellie and Dave, see you guys. Who did I not say hi to before? I feel like a few people jumped in. Oh, Sandrine, good to see you.
Thank you, Rabbi Sollish. Have a good night.
Pleasure.
Good night.
Good to. Hey Sandrine, Rhonda, and Danny. All right, Mike, it's great to have you back.
My friend,
Mike
you heard
jumped
this.
out. All right, good to see you guys. All right, have a wonderful night, Lila Tov.
Good night,
Oh,
you heard
1 second,
this.
1 second. 1 second, robots of medicine, the future of medicine and the end of disease, with Dr. Raymond Shinazi, pioneering antiviral researcher at Emory University, who developed 94% of HIV patients in the world are taking medications, treatments developed by him. He told me when I spoke with him last week that he personally has been involved in saving the lives of over 30 million people because of his work in HIV and also with hepatitis B and C. And so we have him. We secured him. It was an incredible get to get him. February 23rd, it's a Monday evening. We're doing it in Toko. Please join and please share it with your friends and family. He's amazing. He'll speak about his journey. He grew up, by the way, he was born and grew up in Egypt. I'm not going to give away too much of the story. He had to leave Egypt as a refugee, and his story is incredible. So please join us. It's going to be eye-opening, and we'll speak about the future of eliminating disease and that possibility and what that looks like, what that might look like for the future. Okay.
Ari, I want to point
Yes.
out that there were no animals being eaten before Noah.
Right.
So there was a need
Right.
for that law.
Humans were not eating meat.
Right.
Only sushi, which we have, by the way. We have sushi.
So there was
One-
a definite need for that law to come.
For Noah. Yeah. Not right. God tells Noah, you can eat animals, but not while they're alive. Let's just be very clear here. Do not eat a live animal. By the way, like, I don't want to get gross, especially when everyone's about to hit the sushi. Any one time everyone starts to sound like, you know the following is going to be. But, however, I mean, aren't there things like people eating like live, not that it's kosher, locusts and
maybe
whatever?
maybe a snail or something if you're starving and you're lost.
Well, 1 second. Hold on. I'm not talking about life and death situation. I'm talking about, I don't know, just stuff. Eat live fish, yeah. I'm just saying it's not, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Oysters actually are.
It wouldn't be kosher, but is it done? I think so.
They can kill you because they have
But you should know that the overarching value on that not eating a limb from a live animal is no cruelty to animals. That's kind of the overarching thing. That's, by the way, the 7 OI laws in general are categories, not specifics. So it's umbrella categories. So like the one about not eating the live limb of an animal means no cruelty to animals. Now, how would that apply to, I don't know, testing on animals? Well, I mean, you got to look that up, and now's not the time for that. But like, could you test on animals for cosmetics? It would be very shaky. Now, what about to save a life through medication? Okay, that might be a little bit different. But carte blanche to say, well, animals don't count because they're not human and whatever. That's not a Jewish or Torah or God universal value. It's important to know the sources. Anyway,
What about putting a pet in a cage?
That's a good question. Animals in cages is a challenge.
I was just going to say that. Animals in zoos.
Say it again.
Pardon?
What'd you say?
We do, in fact, I did, in
Yeah.
labs, experiments on animals
Frogs?
For medicine.
frequently, on medicine.
Yeah. For medical purposes, there might be a different thing. Yeah. But I'm saying for cosmetics.
Live cats?
Live cats
Live cats.
and live dogs. And that's been pretty cool.
That's pretty okay. I'm not. Listen, I'm not giving any rulings. But the point is, it's important to know what those divine values are. Then we have a framework of operating. Yeah. All right. Good. We'll close it out. Only for the sake of the sushi. That's asking to be eaten. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm hearing the sushi say. All right. Good to see you guys. Lila Tov, everybody.
Lila
Have a
Tov.
wonderful night. See you soon.